Ambulance service, is the patient breathing?
We can't tell. We're trying to get into the room.
You can't open the door. Can you not break the door down or anything?
I think the person is lying in front of the door.
Okay, so the person that you're calling about, can you see them?
It's just about through the bedroom door. There's blood everywhere. It looks like the person has been stabbed.
West Midlands Police have been alerted to a fatal stabbing in Birmingham. Forensic investigator Cara Nichols-Parkin is dispatched to assess the scene.
I've been working in forensics for 22 years now. I've dealt with hundreds of serious incidents and unfortunately a lot of murders. It's our job to go in there and identify who's responsible. We have to piece together what the forensic evidence is showing us.
There's a blood stain here. Blood drops all the way up the stairs.
The team head to the bedroom, where emergency services discovered a body. The man is identified as 30-year-old Kenneth Ford, the tenant of the property.
Really heavy blood stain here. There's just so much blood in here.
Cara starts by examining the victim for evidence of what could have happened.
He's got quite a lot of injuries. Whether the injuries in his head are from a tool of some sort, it's hard to say. He's got bruising around his knuckles and everything, so I suspect he's fought back at some point.
He got lots of defensive wounds to his hands, which just shows that the attack had been going on for some time.
We'll get his fingers and hands done first, and then we'll swab his black eye, in case obviously that was done with a fist.
Swabs are taken from the victim to check for the presence of anyone else's DNA.
There was nothing to suggest that this was a robbery or anything like that. Does he know the person that's committed the offence? We need to find out what's happened.
With a violent killer at large, police start urgent door-to-door inquiries.
I don't suppose you've heard any disorder over the last evening, this morning, I think?
It's fighting or somebody's...
I can't really give you too much information. Have you seen or heard any disturbance over the road at all?
Nothing.
Nothing at all?
I've seen is I've come here and gone back.
Yeah. All right, no worries. Thank you guys for your help. Have you heard anything in there today?
Yeah, last night, yeah.
What time was that, roughly? Could you hear anything in particular?
With evidence gathered from the bedroom, the forensic team follow the trail of blood downstairs.
With a situation like this where there's so much blood, there's a good chance there will be a transfer of blood from our victim onto the suspect. Spatter's potentially gone onto the clothing, fingerprints in blood.
There's some stain on the floor, and there's a lot of blood down here. Did it start down here and move up there? Or has it been moving between the two?
The scene is secured for further forensic analysis, and Kenneth's body is removed for post-mortem.
Come, quick chat, yeah.
Officers at the scene identify the man who called the ambulance.
Basically, I had a call saying that, you need to call an ambulance for Ken. Something's happened. And I said, where are you? Call the ambulance if he's not in a good state. He goes, no, I've gone.
Can I ask who that was, mate?
His name's Gary O'Neill.
I'm just seeing if I can get any more on him.
An officer checks the police national database of all known offenders in the UK.
Gary O'Neill, there you go, got you. That's going to be him.
As a search begins for Gary O'Neill, Cara joins the homicide team, led by Detective Inspector Michelle Thurgood, for a case briefing.
Morning, everybody. This briefing this morning is in relation to the murder of Kenneth Ford. A phone call was made to a friend of the deceased from Gary O'Neill saying that Kenneth needed an ambulance.
I'll just run you through the scene we've got. So the front door leads into the lounge. There's a sofa that's underneath these stairs here. There's a lot of blood staining around that area. But then upstairs, so when you go upstairs, the deceased was found just behind the door. There's blood everywhere in the room. It's been a really nasty attack. He's got lots and lots of injuries. So we just need to establish what's gone on.
In terms of Gary O'Neill, obviously we need to get Gary an interview so we can understand what occurred and process him for any potential forensic evidence that he might have on himself or any of his clothing. And the murder weapon is still outstanding. Can we see what that weapon was? OK, thank you, everybody. It's clear that Kenneth Ford was the victim of a violent attack. At this moment in time, Gary O'Neill is the suspect, but I have to keep my mind open. He called to say Kenneth needs help, so he could be a witness. We do often have witnesses that don't come forward because they are frightened. We need to eliminate the fact that anybody else could be responsible.
So if we can just walk the street, yeah, and just line it from the centre of the road under the vehicles, we'll do the drains last.
A team of 8 specialist search officers is deployed to comb the square mile surrounding the crime scene in search of the murder weapon or any other forensic evidence that could identify the killer. With no sign of Gary O'Neill in the local area, officers begin to trace his card transactions, looking at where he's used it within the last 24 hours.
We can see where he's used his bank card. That can be financial transactions in shops, restaurants, or it can be use at cash points and ATMs. We can literally track any kind of expenditure that he's doing.
Gary's financial records reveal that he bought a coach ticket in the early hours of the morning, before Kenneth was found dead. Up to 15 coaches leave Birmingham Station every hour to destinations throughout the country.
He could be going anywhere all over the country. Our concern is that he's going somewhere where there's a port, where he can then continue his journey and leave the UK entirely.
Authorization is granted to access Gary O'Neill's phone so that officers can analyse his cell site data.
Overnight, cell site use in and around the offence location, and then I haven't seen a trace of this phone until 15:52 today, and it's in Carlisle.
Carlisle sits 200 miles north of Birmingham.
When somebody's using the internet or social media platforms, or whether they're making actual phone calls, they're connected to a mast. All of that phone data can be tracked.
But he's now moving away from Carlisle.
He's following the M6.
Yeah, he's tracking up the M6 now. Already past Lockerbie.
So he's heading to Scotland.
Yeah.
This is a serious point in the investigation. If Gary O'Neill committed this offence, he's a dangerous man. We need to arrest Gary and get him into police custody.
An alert goes out on the UK's police databases that Gary O'Neill is now wanted on suspicion of murder. With bloodstains suggesting Kenneth was assaulted in different parts of the house, blood pattern analyst Phil Field is sent to the crime scene to determine how the attack unfolded. He starts by examining the bloodstains downstairs.
My role as a blood pattern analyst is to really examine the distribution of blood and determine what kind of activities within the scene might have occurred to produce that blood staining. A blood pattern can tell numerous stories. Plenty to support the view the injured party may well have been assaulted whilst sitting in this seat. I've got a number of questions. What was the nature of the attack and how many people may have been involved? What were the movements within the property?
There actually appears to be some clotted blood.
So it would suggest that the injured party has been here for a period of time that's sufficient to allow that clotting process to happen. The blood clotting process really is the body's natural response to an injury. Blood platelets grouping around the site of the injury to form a mesh to stop the bleeding occurring. It can take somewhere between 2 and 15 minutes for visible signs of clotting to appear.
Having analysed the blood patterns downstairs, Phil heads to the bedroom where Kenneth's body was found.
I've just discovered some spatter on the radiator behind this curtain. There's some moving transfer patterning going on here that indicates quite heavy contact with a heavily blood-wet item moving in contact with the radiator. So in terms of identifying an attack site in the property, this is definitely one.
There actually appears to be some clotted blood and some tufts of hair in that stain.
The blood within this region provides really good evidence that this attack has occurred whilst the victim's injuries have already begun to form clotting blood. So his injuries have actually been sustained at least several minutes earlier. If I were to hypothesise, I'd be saying he's bled a lot here and then made his way upstairs where he's really taken more of a beating.
The different sites of clotted blood suggest that Kenneth was attacked over an extended period of time. Detectives have been searching for Kenneth's killer for 4 hours, when they are alerted to an emergency call from a driver to his depot on a coach heading to Scotland.
This guy's an absolute spanner. Hasn't been able to utter a word that makes a sense. My dog can bark a sentence better. He's harassing my brothers, ruffling, charging. It's the way he's putting himself across. It's just like he's staring right through you.
Yeah.
As if you're a bit of glass. He's really not there.
Scottish police are called to remove the man and identify him as Gary O'Neill. They seize his possessions, including clothing.
I'm just looking to get a better understanding of who the suspect is in this case.
With Gary detained, Lisa turns to Kenneth's social media accounts to work out whether there's a connection between the two men.
We can do work then around their Facebook and things like that and see how closely linked they are. We can see on here that they come from the same area of Ireland and have moved to the area together from Ireland. This video was taken by Kenneth on the 27th, just a few hours before he's killed.
Now, this is just my house. Don't like this out. Don't get me wrong, I've only moved in. Carpet's going to be changed.
When Kenneth is showing us around the house, he's really proud of himself. He's proud that this is his home. He shows us the sofas in the living room where all the blood is found at the scene. And then he takes us up the stairs.
Now, that's like 2 beds. This is what Gary was used. As you can see, it's a big room I've gave him.
What is surprising about this video is that it looks like Gary and the deceased have been friends, like really good friends, and he wants to share this house with Gary.
Right now, this is room number 1, so Gary.
You can hear his voice, and he's happy and he's proud and he's looking forward to living with his friend.
Now, that's like 2 beds. This is what Gary.
Yeah, within 12 hours, something's happened that's ended up with Kenneth being killed. And I genuinely can't understand what would warrant this sort of attack on your friend.
The next morning, Gary O'Neill is transferred from Scotland to Birmingham for questioning.
Can I step over here, please, mate? Stand here, Gary. Can I have your name, please?
Gary O'Neill.
And the offence he's been arrested for, please.
Murder.
You've got to remember why you're here.
No, don't.
Well, you're here on suspicion of murder.
You said I was here for murder.
That's suspicion of murder. That's the offence.
Gary, if you understand, obviously murders is a serious allegation to put towards someone. So having you under arrest, okay, means we can interview you and we can get your side of the story.
No,
we know there's 2 sides to every story. Okay. I'm going to ask you about your health and well-being. Do you suffer from any heart, epilepsy, asthma, diabetes or allergy?
No.
Okay.
But I did have a blood clot to the brain 10 years ago.
Okay. Any other physical medical condition? So what's that then, mate? You're a? Benzodiazepam. Do you have any injuries? They can show me your hands. Okay. Right. In line with that then, Gary, I've heard what the officers told me. I'm happy that the arrest is lawful and legal, and therefore I'm going to authorise your detention. 323.
Swabs from Gary O'Neill will be tested for traces of Kenneth's DNA. They will also be compared to DNA found on Kenneth's body to determine if Gary was involved in causing his injuries.
Only DNA I'm gonna find here is my own DNA.
In the forensics department, crime scene coordinator Cara receives the initial post-mortem report.
It's quite shocking to see how many injuries are actually there. I think they're saying 100. Just the sheer quantity of injuries was probably the most injuries I've ever seen. It's obviously gone on for some time and it's took a lot of effort to cause all those injuries. It was a sustained attack. Cause of death is attributed to the head and facial injuries, only compatible with an assault with an implement, and at least a few resemble injuries compatible with the end of a claw hammer. So you can see, the 2 injuries with the gap in between, which is consistent with the claw.
With Gary in custody, detectives call upon Cara to establish a forensic strategy for the investigation.
I've just got Phil's findings. So there may have been an attack site downstairs, and there is clear evidence of an attack site upstairs. The presence of clotted blood here indicates that the attacks happened over a period of time.
Yeah.
It's been a frenzied attack. Loads of injuries, which looked like potentially from a claw hammer.
So everyone that we have spoken to are saying Gary and Kenneth are really close friends their whole lives. They live together, they do everything together. So why Gary would then decide to kill Kenneth remains unclear. In terms of the forensic strategy, Cara, you've already put something in place around that, have you?
So it's going to be based around the blood and the transfer of blood between the two to put him there at the time of the actual assault, whereas his DNA within the scene isn't going to prove that he's committed the offence because he's been in that address a lot. Gary and Kenneth were really good friends, and I think he'd been staying at that address. So Gary's fingerprints and DNA would have been within the address. So we really needed to focus on transfer of the blood, fingerprints in blood, that would put someone there at the time of the actual offence where he was bleeding. We've got Gary's clothing, that is blood-stained, so we can identify whose blood that is. If Kenneth's blood's on Gary's clothing, then obviously that puts him at the scene at the time that the assaults happened.
Also really important for tying him in to actually the murder.
To determine whether Gary was present during the attack, Cara sends in a team of specialists to search for any fingerprints in blood at the scene.
Yeah, I can see some marks just on the banister rail here. Possibly could be ridge detail. Having looked at it, I think it's going to be best if I just cut it off here and here, and actually get that treated in the lab.
Due to the banister being on the stairs and that it's sort of circular in shape, it's quite difficult to actually photograph at the scene. So in this case, we decided to cut the banister out and send it into our fingerprint development lab.
If they can find a fingerprint in the blood, it could reveal who killed Kenneth. The mark in blood on the banister is fast-tracked for forensic examination.
There's quite a lot of blood staining, quite a lot of smears.
Forensic technician Vanessa Gardner scrutinises it for any ridge detail.
There's one particular area that looks like it might have some quite good detailing. Now we're going to have to use all the different light sources to see the best way that I can capture the actual ridge detail before we photograph it. We can see the area of ridge detail in blood, and this filter is making the blood appear darker, so it's giving us more contrast.
Next, the ridge detail is chemically treated with acid dye, which can make blood fluoresce to enhance any fingerprints.
For this item, I'm using acid violet. With this, because it is quite heavily blood stained, I can see that the blood's already reacting. Just need to move it into the wash now, acid wash, and just get rid of some of the background staining and to give us the most contrast.
The ridge detail must be further enhanced to be usable for the fingerprint bureau.
We're getting contrast, but we're losing the ridge detail, so when we turn it into a grayscale image, that might be better for the fingerprint expert to have a look at. We're getting good contrast, so that's the mark that I'll be sending up to the bureau.
The fingerprint bureau will compare the mark against both Kenneth's and Gary's prints. Detectives are still trying to establish whether Gary O'Neill was at the house on the night of the attack, and if he was alone.
OK, so we've got some footage from the scene, which is Colebrook Road.
They retrieve footage of the streets near Kenneth's house from the day he was killed.
Kenneth Ford has been killed in a particularly brutal attack. We have no murder weapon and we have no forensic evidence to link the suspect to the scene at the time of the attack.
There he is.
Here we've got the suspect walking towards the front door. The suspect goes into the address. There's a couple of other people with him and they look like they've got a pushchair.
And what time's that at?
This is at 22:58. So they've all gone into the address. I think this is them leaving now. So now we're on 23:21. So they've been there about 22 minutes maybe altogether. Yeah. And we can see the suspect and the person who we believe is the deceased in the doorway.
Yeah. Because he's quite tall, isn't he?
He is tall. We've just got the suspect and the deceased left in the home address, haven't we, at that point?
Yeah. The suspect leaves screen time of 01:57.
Yeah.
And then he looks to be a little bit worried about
spooked
that.
by the ambulance.
Yeah,
Yes,
definitely.
okay.
So he walks off the other way, but the other way is a dead end. So he kind of waits a little minute, walks up there, and then comes back past.
So it looks like he's carrying a big, like, shopping bag, isn't it? We could have taken the murder weapon with him.
Yeah, looks like it. So in between the witnesses leaving and this time now, nobody else comes or goes to the address.
This is a real breakthrough for us because this shows that no one else is in that property, just Kenneth and Gary, which obviously leads us to believe that no one else can be responsible for what's happened to Kenneth.
With the new CCTV footage and evidence gathered from the crime scene, Gary is taken in for questioning.
So, Gary, you were arrested on the offence of murder. The law states murder is where a person of sound mind and discretion unlawfully kills with intent to kill or cause grievous bodily harm. Did you commit murder against Kenneth Ford?
No comment.
Okay, Gary, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some CCTV that we've recovered. Is that Ken that's come to the door there, Gary?
No comment.
We know when the unknown male and female had left that it is yourself and Kenneth in that property. Is that you?
No comment.
With what looks like a shopping bag in your hand.
No comment.
Was Kenneth alive at that point?
No comment.
Okay. We're showing the full photographs of injuries to Kenneth's head. They're not pleasant, okay? He's been subject to what appears to be a frenzied attack. Blunt force trauma on his head, other injuries on his torso. How has he got those?
No comment.
What weapon did you use to hurt Ken?
No comment.
What I'm going to show you now are photographs of the address. We have bedding that's heavily saturated in blood. You're nodding your head, and then you can see blood on what appears to be the door. Whose blood is that?
No comment.
Have there been any disputes between you and Ken? Were you angry?
No comment.
Whose blood is that on your clothing?
No comment.
If those clothes are sent off, will there be any of Kenneth's blood?
No comment.
Will it be your blood?
No comment.
Kenneth is dead.
You were there that evening?
That's your mate, isn't it? You've come to England together for a better life. This is your opportunity to tell us what has happened.
No comment.
We'll conclude the interview now then.
Gary O'Neill has given no account. If somebody is innocent, why would they choose not to raise an account? The CCTV confirms that he was at the house, but it doesn't prove that he is the person responsible for the death of Kenneth. What we need is forensic evidence that categorically shows that he committed the murder.
So I'm just laying the item out just so I can see it from the front.
The top that Gary was wearing when he was arrested has been sent to a specialist laboratory to examine for blood.
Straight away, I've found some red-brown staining. So I'll test it using Castlemaire and see if it gives a positive reaction.
The faint spatter marks on Gary's top are tested using a filter paper. Next, a chemical mixture is added that contains phenolphthalein, followed by hydrogen peroxide. If blood is present, the chemical will react by turning pink.
Pink reaction there, so that is a positive for blood.
Right, so what we got is hoodie?
Yeah.
Hooded top.
With the marks confirmed as blood, forensic scientist Steve Paddock begins a detailed blood pattern analysis.
If we find Kenneth's blood on Gary's clothing, then that would be crucial for the investigation because it would put Gary at the scene at the time that Kenneth was bleeding. So we've got a direct link with him to the assault.
Right. Let's have a look at this. It's quite widespread, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Some contact staining down the right sleeve. Some of it quite heavy. During an assault, you might have blood transferred in a number of different ways. Firstly, when a perpetrator or their clothing comes into direct contact with a source of wet blood, and it will create what we call a contact or a transfer blood stain. The second way is where airborne droplets are projected through the air. Blood can be flicked off a hand or a weapon, or if a forceful blow is delivered, into a source of wet blood. We have got some airborne stains on the hood as well. The size of these stains are very small, some of them less than 1 millimetre. This indicates it's most likely to be caused by impact spatter, forceful blow into a source of wet blood, and the force of the blows caused the blood to break up into droplets. We may only expect these droplets to travel maybe no more than a metre. So by observing such small droplets on someone's clothing, really it places them in very, very close proximity. So in this allegation, we've got a suggestion the wearer has repeatedly struck an individual with a hammer. The victim's got blunt force injuries to his head. So to me, particularly this impact spatter would be very much in keeping with that. Quite odd-looking staining, quite like a downwards direction.
Yeah.
And one explanation for that is the hammer's been swung with blood.
Yeah.
It's wet with blood, it's been swung and stopped. And his right shoulder, and the blood's projected down to the lower rear of his back. Let's take a couple of stains for DNA. Certainly, if DNA matches the victim, there's certainly take some explaining.
Yeah.
The blood samples will be analysed for DNA profiles to determine whether the blood belongs to Kenneth or Gary. The ridge detail print, taken from the banister, has been expedited to fingerprint expert Claire Lynch. A match to Gary would prove that he was in the house at the time Kenneth was killed.
We've got apparent friction ridge detail. Friction ridge detail is the little lines that we have on our fingers, is what allows us to identify somebody. So in this case, there is ridge flow. It's an indication to me that that's not necessarily a finger digit, but it's actually a piece of palm. On our palms, we have ridge flow. All of those ridges have characteristics, like a fingerprint. We're going to be looking at this area here on the palm, because between the digits on palms, the ridges flow underneath and make a loop pattern. So that is something we can use to identify somebody with.
Before checking if Gary's fingerprints are a match, Claire first compares the image with Kenneth's prints to eliminate him.
When we're looking at our characteristics, we want to ensure that the characteristics on this side, which is our recovered side, match exactly to the ridge characteristics of our known impression. Because this impression is apparently in blood, the quality of the impression is actually really quite poor. So we've got to be aware that some things may look a little bit thicker, a little bit chunky. Sometimes that impression that's been left, dependent on whatever surface it's been left on, it can actually make certain characteristics look slightly distorted, and that can make it very difficult for us to identify somebody. So we have a ridge coming down here, a ridge coming down here, and they join at the bottom and then carry on. On our known image, we've got a ridge coming down here, a ridge coming down here, and they join and carry on. This characteristic here is called a bifurcation. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So I'm counting here. So I've got a ridge ending that's coming up, and then I've got 3 intervening ridges. So they're just ridges that go between 2 different points of characteristics. We call it coincidence sequence, and it's just where we have the same characteristics in the same placement from one to the other. It just takes one difference to say that it's not that person. So I'm satisfied that everything that I've marked from this impression is actually present in the fingerprint form. My conclusion is that it is an identification to the right palm of the deceased person.
Confirmation that the fingerprint is Kenneth's means that detectives still need forensic evidence that places Gary at the scene at the time of the murder.
In my opinion, from his own actions post-offence, Gary is the person responsible for the death of Kenneth. So it's really important we look at all the possible lines of inquiry to link Gary to the attack. You went last week up to Glasgow in terms of other inquiries with the custody staff.
While awaiting the results of the blood analysis on Gary's top, detectives revisit evidence gathered by Scottish police at the time of his arrest.
No statements from any custody staff that had any dealings with Gary. And the CCTV from the custody block to show his demeanour, how he was reacting. All of that could be really crucial to the investigation.
So we've got statements from the custody team. His initial comment was, "Why am I here?" And she said West Midlands Police were coming to collect him at some point to speak about a murder. And then he's asked, "Is the person dead?" And she said, "Well, if it's murder, then the person has to be dead." She said that he started to get really upset then, with tears flowing down his face. And then he had said that they'd had some kind of falling out.
Which is really, really interesting, bearing in mind he then went on to say no comment in interview.
And then he's gone on to say, "How long do you get for murder?" And the lady's replied, "Well, anything up to life. It all depends on the circumstances." He then said, "I wouldn't get done for murder if it was an accident."
That statement is a really, really significant statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
To have obtained.
Yeah,
Excellent.
definitely.
Gary may not have known whether Kenneth was dead. He did phone the witness and say, "Get him help," which suggests potentially he didn't know. One way or the other, Gary O'Neill is a risk to the public, and we still need forensic evidence which puts Gary in that premises at the time of the offence.
Scientist Steve Paddock receives the results from the blood found on Gary's top.
So what we're looking at here is the DNA results from one of the spots of blood on Gary O'Neill's grey hooded top. We look at 17 specific areas of DNA in an individual's genome. Each area would normally expect to see 2 DNA components, one inherited from each parent. Where we only have 1 peak, this means the same area of DNA has been inherited from this individual's mum and from their dad. Also, what we're seeing is these minor contributions of DNA. So we have DNA from at least 2 individuals within the results. One individual has contributed significantly more DNA than the second. So what we have here is I have Gary O'Neill's reference DNA profile. This represents a graphical representation of this string of numbers. So if we look at this first area of DNA, I can see that Gary O'Neill, his components are 15 and a 17. So they are represented within this DNA profile. We can see that there's a major designation of a 22 and a 23, and a minor designation of an 18 and a 19. If we refer to Gary O'Neill's reference DNA profile, I can see he is in fact an 18-19. So we can see that it's possible that Gary O'Neill has contributed a very small amount of DNA to this result. This is not an uncommon finding. We'll pick up some background cellular material, generally from the wearer themselves. What I have now is a reference DNA profile obtained from Kenneth Ford. So we can see at the first area, Kenneth Ford has a single peak and it's designated as a 15. We move on to the second area of DNA. Within Kenneth Ford's reference DNA profile, again, this is a single peak, this time designated as a 14. If we compare this to the same area of DNA from a blood sample taken from a jacket, we can see this is a large single peak designated as a 14. And in fact, if we go along the remaining areas of DNA, we can see a Kenneth Ford DNA profile matches the major contribution obtained from the blood sample on the jacket. To me, this will provide very powerful evidence that this blood has in fact originated from Kenneth Ford.
Confirmation that the blood on Gary's top belongs to Kenneth is the forensic evidence detectives need to charge him.
Right, we've gone to CPS with all the evidence, and CPS have authorised to charge for you. Your charges for murder, so between the 27th of the 2nd, 22 and the 28th of the 2nd, 22 in the county of Birmingham, murdered Kenneth Ford, contrary to common law. Okay, have you got any replies to that charge? No.
After being charged with the murder of his friend, Kenneth Ford, Gary O'Neill submits a defence statement.
We have the defence case statement for Mr O'Neill. Quite interesting and not probably what we expected. Gary says, I had an argument with Kenneth Ford. During the course of the argument, he told me to leave his house. I went to get my PlayStation and he said that I couldn't have it. Hit me on the head, knocked me down. He kept hitting me and I was worried as I had previously had a serious head injury. I tried to hit out to stop him but couldn't. I then picked up the hammer, which was on the floor in a tool bag. I hit him with the hammer to stop him from hurting me. I do not know how many times I hit him with the hammer. I remember hitting him downstairs, but I have no recollection of hitting him upstairs. I did not set out that evening to kill Kenneth Ford. I am sorry for what happened. First point and the key point is he accepts causing the death of Kenneth. So, comparing what he says was the assault by Kenneth, what are his injuries?
As far as I'm aware, I don't think he had one injury on him at all.
He then talks about a psychiatric report whereby he talks about a head injury sustained and finishes it off by saying, I will plead not guilty to murder, but guilty to manslaughter. This defence case statement has a huge impact on the investigation because we are now looking at a potential plea of manslaughter due to diminished responsibility. Diminished responsibility is where you've got an abnormality of mental functioning from a recognised medical condition that may affect the ability to form a rational view on what is happening at that moment in time. Traditional forensics gives us potentially the who, the where, maybe even the when. Forensic psychology can assist us understanding the why.
To decide whether Gary has grounds for diminished responsibility due to his head trauma, the Crown Prosecution Service calls upon an independent forensic neuropsychologist to make a clinical assessment.
Forensic psychology is increasingly being seen as of assistance to the court. Other forensic sciences, blood pattern, fingerprints and so on, have a physical manifestation they're looking at. In psychology, we're dealing more with what was the function of this behaviour? Why did he behave the way he did? It's an extraordinary behaviour. Why would someone do that? Somebody might have some impairment or damage that means they don't understand the nature of the act or they don't understand that it is wrong. So for example purposes, here's a scan of a brain. What we're interested in is where there might be some gaps or lesions in the brain. And that can happen with head trauma, which could be as a result of blows to the head. In this example model, we might think that there was damage here, where there's a black area, so no blood flow getting there behind the right eye in the frontal area of the brain. It's a little bit like if there's a roadworks and you can't get down a certain street, the blood can't get to that part of the brain. If that impaired, we can't think things through properly before acting. Behaving becomes impulsive and not something that's completely under our own control at all. So in Mr. O'Neill's case, he says he's had a head injury. And when looking at diminished responsibility, an absolute sort of cornerstone of our work is to look at whether somebody is telling the truth. Are they attempting to exaggerate difficulties, pretend they have a problem that doesn't actually exist? Now, maybe he has had those things, but we have ways and means with the testing that we do to detect people who are faking. This is a murder trial. It will have significant consequences for the accused. It already has very significant consequences for the families of the poor deceased. I would be running between 15 and 20 separate psychometric testings to give it the gravity that it deserves and make sure I get a full and proper set of information and opinion to offer to the court.
While psychological assessments are carried out on Gary, Michelle must decide whether to recommend the Crown Prosecution Service accept his plea of manslaughter and move to sentencing, or recommend that he be tried by jury for murder.
We received the first psychiatric report on behalf of the defence on his mental health and specifically around a head injury and whether a head injury he'd historically suffered could be responsible for Gary potentially committing this crime. As you know, Gary is going to make that guilty plea to manslaughter. My decision, along with the Crown Prosecution Service, is whether we accept that plea. The decision whether to go from murder to accepting a plea of manslaughter, diminished responsibility, it's not an easy choice. The difference between a conviction for murder and a manslaughter can be huge. Murder carries a mandatory life sentence. Manslaughter can attract as little as 3 years. Somebody has been killed. Their families are always at the forefront of everything we do, but it has to be evidence-led.
It's a sustained attack. This is the downstairs, a lot of blood here, but then it's gone upstairs, so that obviously shows that it's happened over a period of time. These are some of the injuries that were sustained. He got injuries across most of his body.
How many injuries were there altogether?
I believe there was 112 in total.
In terms of volume, there's a huge amount of injuries that I've personally seen.
The hammer used in the offence hasn't been recovered.
No.
Correct.
And he's had the presence of mind to attempt to flee the country.
This is someone who knows what they're doing. Having gathered all the forensic evidence, my absolute view is that rather than just accepting a plea for manslaughter, this should be a trial for murder.
After 17 hours of consultation over the course of 3 weeks, Dr. Green completes his assessments. He must recommend to the jury whether Gary O'Neill's plea of diminished responsibility should be considered by the court or dismissed.
After assessing Mr. O'Neill, there was clear evidence that the head trauma caused damage to his brain such that blood is now not flowing to parts of his brain that would help him control and organise his behaviour, and he's incapable of stopping himself once he has begun acting. Across many of the tests, looking at his ability to weigh things up, he's scoring around the 1st percentile. This means that 99% of the population would be more able than Mr. O'Neill to plan their behaviour and understand the consequences of their actions. It's my opinion that a defence of diminished responsibility may well be open to Mr. O'Neill due to this organic damage to his brain, which were material to his behaviour at the time.
Diminished responsibility is very complicated and it has a huge impact on the investigation because it's the difference between murder and manslaughter, and Dr. Green's assessment is a key part of the evidence. It's right and proper that the jury have the opportunity to consider all the evidence and reach a verdict. I thought I'd just give you an update from the trial. So, Gary did give evidence, but says he doesn't remember what happened.
Nothing at all?
Nothing at all. The jury took the view that potentially brain trauma, that affects his ability to remember, and that affects his actions on the evening, and came back with a verdict of not guilty murder, which by natural default means he is guilty to manslaughter, diminished responsibility.
Forensics led to him pleading guilty. We just haven't got the murder verdict, have we? Disappointing.
Forensic psychology is becoming increasingly part of murder investigations. Its importance will continue to grow in the coming years as we understand more and more about the impacts of mental health on people's actions. The jury verdict of guilty to manslaughter was obviously very hard for Kenny's family.
Now, this is just my house. Look at the size of it.
They will always believe the sentence is not equivalent to the fact that their son has lost his life. Diminished responsibility gives a reason. It's not an excuse.